I call this meeting of Sweetwater County School District Number 1 Board of Trustees to order. First thing I'd like to do is welcome Dr. Libby at his first board meeting officially as superintendent, so welcome.
Thank you.
So if everyone would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's see, I think Kelly had to step away a moment and we'll have a roll call when she returns. She should be right back. Go ahead.
Mrs. Summers?
Present.
Mrs. Schumacher? Mrs. Thompson?
Here.
Mrs. Wood?
Here.
Mr. Wright? Mr. Wright? Mr. Sorensen?
Here.
Chair Jellicoe?
Present. We do have a quorum. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda. I did not see any addendum items. Okay, so just approve the agenda, please. A motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. We'll move on to number 3, the discussion on the new Rock Springs High School. Dr. Libby, I'll turn that over to you. And Mr. Celeroli. There. Couldn't see you. I got too many microphones between you and me.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Libby. First, an update. I attended the last select committee meeting up in Casper.
Excuse me just a minute, Dan. I'd like to welcome the members of the public as well as the elected officials that we have here. We have people from the city council. We have Mayor Max Mickelson here. We have some legislators here. So welcome to all of you as well as the public. Thank you for being here. Now, please proceed.
And while I was at the meeting, I asked the School Facilities Commission for an update to see where we were as far as the status of the MCE, our most cost-effective remedy. The papers they're going over all the information that they've gathered. And by when I say that they gathered, it was from, excuse me, Bureau Veritas when they did their assessment. And then also we had somebody come in and do an assessment. And so between the two of those assessments, they're gathering all the facts, they're reviewing all of the information. They'll write up a report, and that report is supposed to go to the school facilities commissioners at the August school facilities meeting. Once that has been presented to the commission, then hopefully they will say, okay, move forward to the next steps. The next steps would be to actually look at what the cost of the school is going to be and possibly go out for an architect. The reason why I'm saying possibly is because, as most of you know who've been here for a while, you know that we have almost 50% of the school is already designed. And so do we stay with that architect and just move forward? I've argued that there's some, it's a valid point to stay with the current architect and just extend the contract. We've done it before. They've done it before throughout the state of Wyoming. One of the things that was brought to mind was there's been a huge gap between services. I just had this conversation with the architect today and said because of the gap of services, they may require us to go out for what they call an RFQ, which is a request for qualifications. Based on that, you select some architects, then they provide an RFP, which is a request for proposal. You have a budget. If you open up your number 1 pick, you pick 1, 2, and 3. If you open up your number 1 pick and he's within that budget number, then you can move forward. If he's not, if he's too high, you have 1 or 2 choices. You can either negotiate down or you can go to the second person. That is more time consuming. So for me, and I would absolutely love for the Mercer to go through at the commission in August, at the August meeting, with the advice, to just continue with the contract. It's not unheard of. It's been done before. It's actually been done in our district as well as other districts. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Talking to Dr. Libby, one of the things that, is the big discussion is, what do we get for that? And what is the definition of enhancements? We had this conversation earlier. I can't really give you a definition of an enhancement, because an enhancement is anything that is not in the guidelines. We have the guidelines. The guidelines are based on the adequacy standards of 2014, and anything beyond that is an enhancement. So if, for instance, you get a 200,000 square foot building, that's allowable square footage. The state really doesn't tell you. You have guidelines. You design your classes to the guidelines. But if you want larger CTE areas and you're okay with a smaller classroom, you can do that. The state really doesn't tell you this is what you have to do. Okay, there are guidelines, and that's just what that means. So you can fudge the square footage whichever way you want. But once you do that, you own that building. If your classrooms are too small, you don't get to go back to the state later on and say, man, my classrooms are too small. We got 30 kids in a classroom. I need another 400 square feet on that classroom. That ship has sailed. So the recommendation would be, if you need larger CTE areas, we've had this discussion for the last 2 years, if not longer. Look for partnerships throughout the community. Try to figure out how you can get larger CTE areas. Questions have come up our way as far as, how did other school districts? Because there's lots of rumors going around. And I have to tell you, when I hear people talking about, well, we heard the state paid for this, we heard the state paid for that. We take it serious here. And so I did background, research on 48 districts. And I deal with a different accounting system as far as construction. When you look into the AIM accounting systems, I have the ability to check out every enhancement that has been put in, by any school district over the last 20 plus years. And I'm here to tell you, the districts who have enhancements, whether it's turf fields, whether it's swimming pools, tennis courts, larger CTE areas, they went out for bonds, or they had reserves that they relied on, or they worked partnerships, or they worked rec mill dollars, for athletics. So everybody else has figured out. I mean, this is a smart community. We need to get together, and Dr. Libby has a great plan as far as reaching out to the community. So I'll let him talk about that. But I mean, this isn't rocket science, really. I mean, we don't have to redesign the wheel. There's 48 other, examples. And within that 48, districts, there's many, many other examples of how they finance their things. Big thing, Laramie School, Laramie Pool, and they went out to bond, $25 million. I talked to Alex Ayers, the superintendent up in Campbell County. They came, the school district had to come up with $10 million. Their rec mill came up with $15 million, and they shared a partnership on a pool to give you an idea of what a pool costs and how those prices have gone up. Back in 2007, a swimming pool cost $11 million, $11.9 million. You can't touch a swimming pool anymore without paying at least a minimum of $25 million. So we're talking lots of money. It's going to require lots of thought, lots of planning. We need to keep it as simple as possible so, community, we meet their needs. And with that, I'll take any questions from anybody. But Dr. Libby, if you want to jump in.
Sure, thank you. So in general, we both asked the same questions. I had reached out to some other superintendents across the state to see if I could find out how they had done some enhancements. And did I get it? Not yet. How about now? Oh, there we go. All right, first day. Had an opportunity to reach out to some superintendents and speak to them. And he was right. I figured state gives us money, they would have a list of do's and don'ts. Oh, they don't. So we're making one. Little T chart, right? We're in a space where they've identified the size of the school. The one I always go to is the track, right? There's two different guidelines that the state gives based on the size of the school. One goes for a 6-lane track, one goes for an 8-lane track. We're larger, we qualify for an 8-lane track. So when we look at it and say the school money needs to be, go towards these ideas, we don't have to have a conversation about having an enhancement for an 8-lane track. It's a given. We meet the size of the school district, so that's part of the given. So there's no sense in saying, hey, community, do you really want an 8-lane track? Well, we already get one, right? Something else that fits in there is an auditorium, right? Auditorium is based on population of the student population over a 5-year period. So if we're having a conversation, we don't really have to have too much of a conversation around an auditorium because the auditorium is already part of the building. They're going to base it off of our 5-year average.
It's 5 years beyond the projected completion date of the school.
Gotcha. So we're going future dates for us, which would be great because no one wants to go backwards because the COVID numbers are smaller. So we're going to shoot forward and our numbers will be bigger. So we don't have to ask folks, hey, do you want a big auditorium? Auditorium's kind of already built into that, so you don't need to talk about an enhancement. Some things that would be enhancements are soccer field. If we wanted a soccer field, that would be an enhancement. Pool, that's a big one. Pool would be an enhancement. We had someone come up with like some great ideas. Planetarium, great idea, right? If the community was really interested in that, that's outstanding. That would be an enhancement. Talked about CTE. They basically say, here's your cookie cutter size. Here's the money that you get for it. If you want to have a welding shop that's this big, but we really need one that's this big because this is what the community is, you got two choices. You're either robbing Peter to pay Paul and you're taking square footage off of other spaces of the building, or you go out and you either raise the money through levy, or we go out and we hit up our community. My ideas and my thoughts are this evening, the new president of the community college was here. We have city council members here. We're going to continue to meet and we're going to get a list together of what we believe would be reasonable enhancements for the school district. And then I want to work with the city council and the rec board to say, how do we get this information out? How do we gather information not only from the high school staff, but how do we gather information from our community? This is a community school. It will be here for generations. It's not just for us right now. It's for the next generations and our kids and our grandkids that are going to go through that. So we have one shot at getting it right. So the objective is to work with the community college, work with the rec board, work with the city council, gather as much information as we can so that we can keep the construction and the process moving as quickly as we can to get our kids into a good quality educational system. So I'll be reaching out to Mr. Mickelson in the city council around how can we get this information out. We'll be working with our tech folks here. What's the best way to gather this information so that we can share it back with the board? I'm really excited. I've got some great meetings coming up. We have the I'm going to get this wrong, Southwest Manufacturers Group that's coming up tomorrow afternoon. I'm super excited to meet with them again and start picking their brains around how we can get some opportunities and some investments from our large commercial industries that are here in the county. So I'm really excited. This is going to be an absolutely fantastic project to work on. I'm excited to be here with you for it. So thank you, sir. You've done a tremendous amount of work on getting this done, and I'm certain folks are aware that you and Ms. McGovern burned the candle at both ends for years to get this state to do what was right by this community, and we're going to finish that project off, and it's going to be spectacular. Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
Any questions? I would just like to say that part of, I think, next steps too, and I think Dr. Libby alluded to this, we'll be engaging the high school staff. They live that every day, so they know what the needs are. So the CTE folks, you know what you need. And then how can we maybe create partnerships so that you can have the state-of-the-art equipment, which is very expensive. But, if we're sending out students that graduate and can go into those fields trained on the same equipment that they're using in the field, that's a huge advantage to them. And so we're hoping to develop some partnerships so that we can, the CTE program is really going well at the high school, all aspects of it. And that's a real focus with some ideas as far as going with the manufacturing groups, the mines and all the industry in the area. So that will be a priority, talking to you to find out what you need.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have anything that they would like to ask? This is kind of a informal, if you just come to the podium, and that way those that are listening to it online can also hear.
Hi, I'm Lorna Bath, and I'm a former teacher. And I just have a question about the auditorium. Does it take up space out of that square footage that you get, that allotment of square footage? Or is the auditorium in addition?
It's all part of
It's so,
yeah, like 260,000.
okay, that was my question. Oh, what about a football field?
Square footage? No.
No, but so will the football field stay? Or will the new high school have a football field?
You get a new high school,
Okay,
a new high school football field.
okay, okay. Bleachers. Okay.
Oh, gotta stand.
I think it's fair to say that we're not going to have the ability to have everything that we have with the current school in the new school immediately. First of all, we're looking 5 to 6 years before any student will set foot in the new school out there. So, and even the judge in the lawsuit at the end of last month was very surprised how long it takes to get buildings built in this state. And his statement was to the effect that, you mean these students are already in a facility that is not up to educational standards, and it's going to be 5 or 6 years more that they're going to have to be in that facility before they get a new one? And the answer was yes. So it's not a quick process in Wyoming. And so we as a community may need to prioritize some things that we feel like we need to be part of, right, the initial building, and then other things as we go along. So that's just something to consider. Please.
Madam Chairman, school board members, I'm Rob Slaughter, Sweetwater County Commissioner.
Welcome.
And I apologize, I have not been in on a lot of the earlier talks on your new school. We're very excited for it also. I wondered if you could give me some type of tentative timeline. You say that it's 5 to 6 years, you believe, before students will be in the school. Do you have a tentative timeline for when you may start construction and what the construction process will look like?
Dan? Going to defer to Dan.
Okay, Madam Chair, members of the board, to answer that question, it really depends on, like I just said, when we're talking about selecting architects. If they allow us to go from the Mercer to continuing contract, then you have 50% of the school already designed. So it doesn't take much longer. You got to have everything up and back up to code. So once you do all your code reviews, and then there's actually other ways that you can construct. And then when I go talk with the school facilities, I'm going to talk to them about, there's a CMAR, which the state really isn't they're not really keen on. There is a design build and then design bid build. Design build at this, in this instance, I haven't sat down and looked at pros and cons, but if we went with the same contractor, or I'm sorry, the same architect, since part of the building is already built, you can almost get on it pretty quick as soon as it comes back from code review and go out to bid, and then you start building and designing while they're actually working on the construction of a certain part. Okay, that would be best case scenario. The normal scenario would be you go out for an RFP, the RFQ, then you go RFP. That takes about 4 to 6 months. Then once you have the architect, if it's somebody other than our architect that started the program, you can be talking 18 months, to build. That's a pretty big school, 18 months to maybe even a little bit longer. Then you have to go out to bid, and you go out to bid on that process. So, that's, gosh, to give contractors ample time to look at that, you're probably talking 4 months for a 260,000 square foot building, if not longer, to make sure that everything is included. So now you're, a little over 2 years, and this is if everything goes well in August, and then you're shovel ready in 2 years. That's a big project, probably 3.5 years from start to finish. If everything goes well, worst case scenario, 4 years.
Thank you.
Okay.
One follow-up, if I could.
Sure.
You said that you've looked at 48, not sure where to stand. You said that you've looked at 48 separate districts in doing this. In those other districts where you have seen schools that have been built, are they using local contractors typically, or what is the pool of contractors that you will be drawing from once you start going out to bid on these?
Tonight's your lucky night because you got the oldest facility manager in the state of Wyoming. And I've been around, I've seen it all. There was a time where we had the resources to do something with a lot of local contractors. We drew a lot from Rollins. Those guys are gone. We drew a lot from, up in Teton County. Those guys are gone. Casper was a big pool. Cheyenne was a big pool. These guys are, they're pretty much gone. We've actually hurt ourselves. To get to your point, we will do as much as we can. Anyone who's been around me knows I'm really big into local whenever we can. Sometimes I don't have a choice. Sometimes we do not have to take the low bid. And there has been times where I have not taken the low bid on a new school. I went to the second bid for numerous reasons. But there are times when you have a good low bid, the state says, no, this is it. This is who you have to take. They're qualified. And you have very few Wyoming contractors. It's not because you don't want them, but honestly, they don't have the pool, and get back to CTE programs. I mean, we're severely lacking. We're so far behind. And it's kind of off the topic, but if I could, please. The state of Wyoming is working on a 20-year long-range plan. I've always had to do 5-year plans. The whole concept of a long-range plan is to look at renovations of schools and possibly building schools. If you go out 20 years instead of 5 years, you don't have that crunch where everybody's trying to come into into your community. They gouge the community, and then when the work is gone, so are the workers. But by developing a 20-year plan, what the whole concept is to create this even. You're always going to have some spikes, but for the most part, even. Then through the course of a 20-year of renovation and building schools, you can maintain the workforce here. You can, supply the contractors with work. I was a contractor before I took this gig. And, one of my big things was you have to look, because if you hire guys and you got 20 guys working for you, you want to keep 20 guys busy, for as long as they want to work. And so that's where we run into the crunch here is, I want to hire local. I've been here most of my life now. I've done contract work most of my life here. And that's our big thing. We like to get local people that can do the work. Sometimes, though, they can't do the work because they don't have the resources. So we try, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. All right.
Thank you very much. Madam Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm JT Larson. I serve in the Wyoming House of Representatives for District 17. And I just wanted to say that I'm really excited about this whole process. And I, along with my fellow colleagues in the legislature that represent Sweetwater County, really pushed hard for this building in the last session during budget session. And we were able to get it across the finish line, and look forward to continue working with you and Dr. Libby on this project. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Any other comments?
Madam Chairman, members of the school board, Superintendent Libby, it's really weird to be on this side of that desk. I'm Max Mickelson. I'm the mayor here in Rock Springs, and we are super excited about this opportunity, even though there's some significant challenges that go along with it. I'm very happy to see representatives of the county and our state legislature here. The city is in the middle of a huge consultation project studying our entire Parks and Rec system in Rock Springs. And hopefully we'll have that report in September or October, and it should provide a lot of valid data about what the community really wants in terms of recreational facilities. And I think that's really pertinent to this conversation, because in order to get the school that our community deserves, it's really going to take a partnership between the state, industry, the county, the city, the district, and the people who make up our community. And I think that we can do that. And if we all work together and work to build something that is even a shared facility, perhaps, that we can really actually meet the goal of providing all the things that everyone wants. So I'm super excited. I'm looking forward to continuing to work with everybody, and super stoked to see everyone here. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for being here. Anyone else have any comments? Any questions? Well, we wanted to do this presentation so you had facts from us. So as you're approached by different members of the community, we welcome you to pass on the information. We're trying to get the information out as best we can so that people are coming from a foundation where they have the actual information. We know the rumor mill is rampant, as it usually is. And so that's why we wanted to do this discussion today. And as we start out on this project together as a community and the school district, the city, our county commissioners, all the community members involved, we want to take advantage and make the best facility that we possibly can, because this community deserves it. And our students deserve it. So please, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask, and we'll try to continue to get you the factual information so that you have that to pass on to people that may approach you. Dr. Libby, do you have anything else? Okay. With that, we'll move on to suspending the board meeting and open the public hearing. If some of you need to leave, we completely understand. That's why we wanted to have this discussion early in the meeting, so that if you have other obligations and so forth, we completely understand. I would entertain a motion to suspend the board meeting and open the public hearing.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schumacher. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. We are in the public hearing. Mrs. Harvey.
Okay. Madam Chairman, Superintendent Libby, and fellow trustees, I'm here to present our 2025 budget. And first of all, I would like to thank all of our department heads, our principals, the accounting department, Randy and Scott, for all of our help when preparing this budget. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time, and everybody's help is greatly appreciated. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to touch just on the highlights of the budget, of your budget book, and then we can have any questions after. So beginning on page 14 and 15, which is also your PDF, page 29 and 30, for those online and looking at that copy. This is the resolution that the board passes to adopt the budget, kind of broken out by fund, and this is required by state statute. Moving on to page 17. This is where our mill levies are reported. So we have our mill levies for our 25 mill, Sweetwater BOCES, Region 5 BOCES, and the Recreation Board. kind of backtracking a little bit now and kind of moving forward with the funds of the budget and kind of the meat of it. Moving on to page 2, page 10 of our PDF. This is the budget for our general fund. And we show total expenditure of the general fund of $92,395,635. Cash reserve of $10,131,992. And for this budget, we have a cash carryover of $5,857,593 used to balance the budget. Total cash is about $15.9 million. Moving on to page 2A, 11 of our PDF. And this details out kind of our cash reserve number. So the 3 million reported is kind of used for cash flow purposes. Also have set aside 1,459,146 for impact aid and 4,672,846 for future expenditures and 1 million for contingencies. The next sections that I'm going to kind of go through are by fund. And on each page, column 1 and 2 are kind of your actual amounts for those years. And then the columns to the right, C and D, are our budgeted numbers for 25 year, for the year we're entering in. So beginning on page 414 of the PDF, this details out all of our federal, state, and local grants. And the details are kind of grouped together by grant. And you'll find more information on those on the following pages through 18 of your PDF and through 4E of the actual book. Okay, moving on to page 5 and 19 of our PDF. This is our Recreation Board budget. And this budget was just adopted this afternoon at the Rec Board meeting. Some large projects for the Rec Board include district grounds maintenance, wetland park equipment, Parson Eden School football field sound system, and Pilot Butte Elementary risers and shed storage. Moving on to page 6, page 20 of the PDF. This is our debt service, and we have no debt to report. Moving on to page 7, which is 21 of the PDF, is a capital projects fund. And this fund is basically used for 5-year spending plans for technology, transportation, facility, grounds, nutritional service, print shops, and schools. This fund is also used when, at the end of the year, the schools were able to carry over their available budgets and kind of earmark those for their specific school, for their capital project needs. This budget also includes kind of supports some costs for the new Rock Springs High School that may not be covered by the state. And also helps us kind of carry out our 5-year equipment replacement plan. Page 8, 22 of the PDF is district capital projects. And this is funded by the Rec Board. Kind of the projects I'd mentioned before: Wetland Park, Parson Eden School, football field scoreboard, district scoreboards, and clocks. Page 9, 23 of the PDF is our capital construction budget. And this budget kind of represents the completion of the new Satellite High School and the construction of the district's building needs. Okay, moving on to page 10, 24 of our PDF. This is our insurance budget. And in this budget, we have about 5 years of reserves for the premium stabilization, and that's our target. May use part of these reserves to cover maybe some anticipated costs in the general fund if needed. Medical claims, the expected claims and overall costs for this upcoming year are expected to be up about 3.45%. Our stop loss increase is estimated at an increase of 7.5% also. In this fund, we've also have a reserve set aside to help subsidize the over 65 retiree premiums while the 1,000 PPO plan is being sunsetted. The reserve is approximately $5.7 million. Some other notes on the insurance here is our dental is up 12% and vision remain the same. This fund also includes retiree insurance incentive of 1.8 million and also one support position for an insurance clerk. Page 13, PDF, page 28. These are our pupils' activity funds, and these basically are student activity groups, and these funds are held on behalf of the student groups and activities. And last page is page 33, and that's 48 of our PDF. And this is our cash flow projection. And the way this is prepared, it's prepared using the same methodology as we have for previous years to continue that thought process for our cash flow. And in here it reflects any adjustments that we currently know about. It's a little difficult to estimate, some of our county treasurer money currently because of the way it's reported, but this kind of gives us a guideline and a projection to kind of work with and move forward with. So in conclusion, we are prioritizing educational excellence and fiscal responsibility and ensuring we're meeting our students' needs currently and in the future. Any questions on the budget?
Any
Budget
questions?
book?
Any questions? With regard to the cash flow, in some years, I think the last couple of years, they've actually started making those payments monthly because we used to get the money from the county in May and November is my recollection. And so now they're spreading it out month by month so that we have a more stable funding stream. Is that
Right.
accurate?
Yeah, yes, we do get a monthly, and May and November were kind of your bigger
Mhm.
months based on the payments. But yes, yeah, we are getting them monthly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Other questions or comments? Thank you.
And moving on to our
Okay.
fiscal update.
Mhm.
That's our second attachment. And this fiscal update, it's a projection of revenue and expenditures for the upcoming years that we like to present, throughout the year to kind of give an idea of kind of what we know, what we are expecting currently and in future years. So kind of at the beginning, top of the page, you'll see ADMs. And those are projected out to 2027. And also right below that ADM number, you'll see the dollar amount per student projected out. So overall, this projection, this fiscal projection, kind of the top half are your revenues by year, and then your bottom half, lower half are your expenditures. The revenues are reported at kind of what estimates we currently know. And kind of the first item there is our WD, which is Wyoming Department of Education, our base funding on that. So like our, any ADMs are reflected in kind of that estimate. Also, what we received for the 2025 year is an external cost adjustment provided by the legislature, and that's also baked into that estimate. Moving down a little farther, if you kind of look at the health insurance, on the revenue side, the health insurance is budgeted at 9% on the revenue side, but on the expenditure side, it's budgeted at 15%. And this is kind of done just to stabilize the insurance claims on the expenditure side. And then moving down to the expenditures. And these expenditures represent, if you're looking at a year, kind of the change from year to year. Contingencies, if you kind of see that number, it's budgeted a little higher, kind of due to the current lawsuit. Steps and lanes are also included in the staff compensation number. New expenditures reported on here include a transfer to the ROTC program for $190,000 and a transfer to Overland Education Center for $552,000. You'll also see a transfer to the nutrition service operation reflected in 25 and 26. And, you know, this is quite a large transfer. So any continuation of this large of a transfer could it really have a negative effect on our general fund. Moving down, you can see the cash carryover amount that I mentioned before, the 5.8 million used to balance the budget. And you also see that in 25 and 26, we are in balance, but for the following year, they'll we'll have to do some work to get that in balance. And also you'll see below, like I mentioned through the budget, a breakdown of the cash reserve. And just kind of note there too, that the future expenditures number you see there, that can also help with when our ADMs come up and we're having to like have upfront costs for teachers, we'll have that revenue. So that's kind of why we're looking at those future costs down below. And then I already briefed on, you know, minimum fund balance. That helps us out at the beginning of the year, you know, before all of our revenue starts to kind of generate and come in. Any questions on the projection?
Any questions? Mrs.
Madam
Summers?
Chair, I just had a quick question about the nutritional transfer. So is that because our nutrition services program isn't covering its costs, so we have to transfer from the general fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? Realizing that nutrition services is not covered under the block grant. That's one of the things that we are, the lawsuit also addresses, is the fact that there should be state funding for nutrition services. So that's why that comes from the general fund.
Right. Right.
The other thing, as long as our student enrollment, our ADM, is decreasing, that our block grant is based on a 3-year rolling average.
Yes.
Once we are able to turn that around, hopefully soon,
Mhm.
with an increase in student population, then we receive those funds immediately. Is that not accurate? I mean, it's not a 3-year thing. You don't go, if you're going up in student enrollment, you need the money sooner.
Right, yes,
And the
Yeah.
state accommodates that.
right. Yeah, so our ER funding is based on that ADM number or that
Just,
3-year
just for
rolling average.
just for clarification.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I just had one more.
Sure. Mrs. Summers?
I remember during COVID, the state legislature increased the amount we were able to carry over from year to year. Will that be continued, or will they drop it back down to what they had previously? Do we have any indication of our carryover, our reserves?
Right. Well, currently it's at 30% of our guarantee. That's our amount. And it is, I believe in a couple years, it is expected to sunset. Whether it will drop back down to that 15% is unknown. Or it may fall somewhere in between. Yeah, at this time, we don't know.
I would suggest that most of the districts are pleading for it to stay at 30%.
Yes, yes. Yeah, 15% is
way
definitely
too low.
too low.
Way too low.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Sorensen?
I just wanted to say thank you. I came in earlier today to get my questions answered, and I'm very impressed with your thorough knowledge of the budget and your willingness to share things. And really do appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, and thank you to all of your staff in the preparation of this. I know it's a lot of work, and so thank you. And please thank your staff as well.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Is there any public comment on the public hearing, on the budget part? Is there any public comment for that? We have received no written comments regarding the budget hearing, but is there any in-person comment on the budget, on the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll move on to close the public hearing and reconvene the board meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Summers. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Okay, we are now back in the regular board meeting. So we'll move on to communications and correspondence. If a member of the public initiates specific complaints or charges against an employee in order to protect the employee's rights to privacy and due process, the board will only hear those complaints or charges in closed session. The board encourages concerned individuals to file complaints using the appropriate district complaint procedure and appropriate forms, which can be obtained from the district website. As per policies B, DDH, and KD, please limit your comments to the board to one time. If your comments have been previously submitted in writing, please refrain from addressing the board a second time. Written comments will be posted to the agenda in the written public comments section below. Written public comments must be received by 1:00 p.m. on the day of the board meeting and will be available for the public and trustees to view, but will not be read aloud at the board meeting. Policies B, DDH, and KD continue to state questions asked by the public shall, when possible, be answered immediately by the chairman or referred to staff members present for reply. Questions requiring investigation shall be referred to the board or administrative staff for consideration and later response. As of 1:00 p.m. today, we received no written public comments. Is there any in-person public comment? Any in-person public comment? Any in-person public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the treasurer's reports. Mrs. Summers.
For the general fund treasurer's report, month of June 2024, the beginning balance was $11,882,391.52. Plus the revenues received during the month of $17,485,400.40. Interbank transfers in totaled $14,051,044.33, less the warrants written during the month of $9,819,807.16, and intrabank transfers out totaling $11,519,444. Intrabank transfers out totaled $6,090,000. Ending cash balance was $15,989,585.09. For the treasurer's report for the school lunch program, June of 2024, the beginning balance was $752,401.36. Revenue totaled $1,022.11. Interest was $1,022.11. Revenue was $6,624.39. The CFP reimbursement was $14,565.73. The federal reimbursement was $128,724.69. And the FFVP grant reimbursement was $4,999.14. There was an ending cash balance of $36,953.14. For the Head Start program, as of June 30th, 2024, the beginning balance was $99,327.60. Deposits during the month were $418,138.87. Warrants cleared totaled $418,272.29 for an ending balance of $99,194.18. That concludes the treasurer's reports.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's reports for the general fund, the school lunch program, and the Head Start program.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the warrants. Mrs. Summers.
The warrants as of July 17th. Checks number 169046 through 169054 total the amount of $42,134.52. Checks number 169055 through 169227 total the amount of $505,514.32. Net payroll numbers 804776 to 804778 total the amount of $10,444.29. Check number 3984780, transfer general fund, totals $7,500,000. Check number 3991256, general fund, totals $400,000. Checks number 3983383, 3984867, general fund, total $5,950,000 to capital projects. The transfer general fund totaling the amount of $140,000 from the general fund to food service. Check number 3984793, transfer general fund impact aid, $75,000 from Rock Springs National to WGIF. Check number 1281319, transfer general fund impact aid, totals the amount of $130,847.56. Transfer to the general fund. Correction for deposit recorded to the general fund impact aid account that should have been recorded to the general fund account. Checks number 3984792, 3990756, transfer major maintenance totaling the amount of $1,345,000. Check number 3983375, transfer food service totaling the amount of $6,000 from food service to general fund, Making Proud Choices Reducing the Risk grant. Check number 1164, Head Start Nutritional Program, School Lunch Program, Sweetwater County School District Number 1, totaled the amount of $50,751.42, transfer from Head Start Nutrition to Food Service Fund. Check number 06-2024-01, Sweetwater County School District Number 1, Teacher Housing Trust, to Lynette Wingington, totaled the amount of $500, was a housing deposit refund. That concludes the warrants.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the district warrants and the release of those payments.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Consent agenda. Board of Education, all matters listed under the consent agenda are matters about which the board has governing policies, implementation of which is delegated to the superintendent. They will be enacted in one motion in the order listed below. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the Board of Trustees votes on the motion unless members of the board request specific items be held and discussed separately and/or removed from this section. A, approval of consent agenda items as presented and/or amended. B, approval of the minutes from the June 10th, 2024 board workshop. C, approval of the minutes from the June 10th, 2024 regular meeting. D, approval of the minutes from the June 10th, 2024 executive session. E, approval of the minutes from the June 24th, 2024 special board meeting. F, approval of the minutes from the June 24th, 2024 executive session. G, approval of the minutes from the July 9th, 2024 special board meeting. H, approval of the minutes from the July 9th, 2024 executive session. I, facilities, approval of the bid to replace gym sports floor at Walnut Elementary. J, facilities, approval of the bid to replace gym sports floor at Sage Elementary. K, facilities, approval of the amendment to the North Park water line upgrades. L, facilities, post approval for the painting of Westridge Elementary School, hold. M, finance, approval of the 2024-2025 budget. N, finance, approval of the official bond and oath for the school superintendent. O, finance, approval to increase the deductible for property liability insurance. Hold. P, finance, approval of long-term disability policy. Q, general board business, approval of the Wyoming High School Activities Association district representatives. R, human resources, approval of personnel recommendations. And we do have an addendum on the some hires. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item L and O? Second by Mrs. Schumacher. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Okay, we'll go on to L, which is the painting, post-approval for the painting of Westridge Elementary School. Dr. Libby, would you address that one, please?
I think I do. I'll take a shot at it. So, so the post approval came around because the original bid came under $50,000, and then when the construction started to go through, the labor costs jumped. So the labor costs came in over what the board actually approved us to do. So the reason it's coming through is post approval, and the language that is in here is if we can't get the building painted, we can't open it. So the kids don't have a place to go. And when we were looking at the requirements and the language that stated what are the exceptions for doing a post-approval, we decided we didn't want to cut any of the language out and just give the abbreviated version of what the statute says. So we decided to put the whole statute in there, and really what it boils down to, it prevents, it's the last part, it prevents serious disruption of the services. If we can't get the building painted, we can't get the kids back into the building, and kids need the building. So the reason why this came through as post-approval is we just had labor costs that came in over what the expectation was.
Mr. Celeroli?
And also, when you're doing renovations, a lot of times we put the 20% contingency. But if you remember on that building, the board gave me the authority to move forward on projects as we saw, as we needed.
Mhm.
So, that kind of ties into what Dr. Libby said.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Thompson?
I guess my question would be, how much did it exceed?
It was quite a bit. I don't have the exact number. I would have to go to my secretary and look, but I would say it was probably in around $5,000-$6,000 over the original. And what we did is we solicited prices the same time we did here. We didn't know that it was going to go over 50,000, so we didn't have to go out to a public bid. We solicited prices. They came in and said, again, it's hard for somebody to come in and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to paint this building. Well, then we demo a wall and we find something behind the wall. Now we have to replace more than what we demoed. So it just kind of goes on, from there. So we solicited prices, but did not go out to public bid because at the time I didn't feel that we needed to. Okay.
Further discussion? Is there a motion to approve L Facilities post-approval for the painting of Westridge Elementary School? It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. A second? Second by Mrs. Schumacher. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to O, Finance, approval to increase the deductible for property liability insurance. Mrs. Harvey, would you address that one?
Yes, Madam Chair, Superintendent Libby, trustees. So what is proposed in front of you is to increase the deductible from 10,000 to 25,000 for property. And based on kind of review of our claims over the past few years, we have very few claims between 10 and 25,000. So it was kind of recommended by our insurance agent to increase that deductibility and pay the lower premium. And by doing that, it is estimated that we would save approximately $64,000 per year by going to that higher deductible. And also it is kind of noted that most districts and municipalities are going to the higher deductible, kind of to have that savings.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Sorensen?
so when they calculate the savings, is that just pure premium savings, or are we taking into account the claims that go over 25 that we now have to come up with 15,000 to cover?
The 64,000, that's basically a savings of our premium.
And then on average, do we know how many claims, we don't have many claims that go between 10 and 25, but how many do we have that go over 25? Do we know?
Oh, I don't know the exact number, but I could look into that and let you know. Yeah,
Okay.
so the exact number, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, because it just comes down to the math of how many claims we expect that will be extra $15,000 and compared to the savings and premiums, seems pretty straightforward. So.
Right.
Further discussion? I would just remind everyone that if you've looked at your own property taxes, In the last couple of years, they're on the rise. And another reason that we're having, I think our previous carrier withdrew from the state, which caused us to have to seek a new insurer. And it's becoming more and more common for insurers in Wyoming to leave the state. Our options are becoming fewer and fewer when it comes to property tax and liability tax, liability insurance. So those are things to keep in mind, and I'm sure that you're experiencing the same issues with your personal property.
Yes.
Further discussion? To entertain a motion to O, finance approval to increase the deductible for property liability insurance.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Okay, item number 12 is the 2024-2025 handbooks. Approval of the K-12 handbook changes for the 2024-2025 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Summers. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor then of approval of the K-12 handbook changes for the 2024-2025 school year?
Aye.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign? Motion passes. Transportation. The bus routes for the 2024-2025 school year. Approval of the school bus routes for the 2024-2025 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. Okay, any discussion? Any questions, comments? I think the only real change that was brought forward previously was the fact that where we are bringing Desert View students over to Westridge, and we'll have stops at Desert View to take students to Westridge for this school year. That's basically the only change in the routes from last year. Is that correct? Okay.
Chair Jellicoe,
Mrs. Bolton.
typically when we bring this motion forward to approve, the board also mentions that you guys give permission to the transportation department to be able to adjust routes based off of capacity need if nobody's at the stop. And I just want to make sure that that is part of this so that it's noted so that they have permission. Otherwise, how these are accepted, they will not have the flexibility to change them.
Okay, approval of the school board bus routes for the 2024-2025 school year with the addition that the transportation department has some flexibility in those routes upon need when school actually starts and actually as school progresses too, because it can change during the school year. Is the maker of the motion?
I will amend the
Okay,
motion.
okay, go ahead. Mrs. Thompson, you're okay with that amendment?
Yes.
Okay, is the second also okay with that amendment? Okay, all in favor of the approval of the school bus routes for the 2024-2025 school year with the addition that the transportation department can modify those routes as needed pertaining to whether students are there at the beginning of the school year or during the year as needed. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Health insurance premiums. A, approval of the health insurance premiums as proposed by Sweetwater County School District Number 1. Mrs. Harvey, it's your night, isn't it? That's what happens when we have a budget meeting.
All right. So the proposed rates, health insurance rate for 2025 UMR, they're calculating a 7.5% increase this year. And so kind of what you'll see on the screen there is what UMR proposes and then what the district proposes. So UMR is proposing that 7.5% increase. And if we, as a district, were going to kind of try to catch up with those UMR rates, we would have to increase about 10 to 12% to get that increase, but we are kind of passing on the 7.5% increase just to maintain the insurance, that the insurance fund is well reserved. And so the insurance fund can carry on the difference between the calculated rates and the premium rates. You'll see this for each one of the plans that we have, kind of the same method. Our Medicare supplement plan did increase also, kind of a large increase, but we did cap that at the 7.5% to be kind of consistent with our overall increases. Dental rates are up by about 2% for actives and approximately 18% for over 65 retirees. Vision remained the same for active and retirees and up about 7% for over 65. Any questions?
And the dental?
Yeah, the dental is up by approximately 2% for actives and about 18% for over 65.
Thank you. Okay, is there a motion to approve the health insurance premiums as proposed by Sweetwater County School District Number 1? It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Second? Second by Mrs. Schumacher. Discussion.
I have a question.
Mr.
Madam Chair.
Sorensen.
So since I'm kind of new at this, I don't know, what's our average increase year in, year out? Is this a fairly standard 7%? I know health insurance is really hard to contain. Is this pretty consistent or do we see a big fluctuation?
I meant, I guess to give you a completely honest answer, I would have to look back a few years. But I mean, I think within this, we were pretty consistent within this range as far as an increase.
Thank you.
Over the past several years, UMR has always, the increases as recommended by UMR have always been greater.
Yes.
And Sweetwater County School District, because of the insurance fund that we have sought to stabilize those a little bit so that there's not the fluctuations that we see in the national market.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the purpose.
Right, exactly. And you can see kind of from the different plans how their proposed increase, like Chair Jellicoe said, is always higher than what we pass on.
Any other discussion? Again, that was the purpose of the insurance fund, because this used to come out of the general fund, and that made fluctuations with the
Yes.
general fund
Right,
huge. And
right.
so with the formation of the insurance fund, it stabilizes it and it takes it away from the general fund and those fluctuations there.
Right. Kind of
So-
helps with those costs.
Yes, so just for clarification. Okay, we have a motion to approve the health insurance premiums as proposed by Sweetwater County School District Number 1. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. General Board Business. Approval of the BOCES 5 proposed bylaw amendments. Mrs. Thompson, would you like to address that one?
Madam Chair. So for BOCES 5, the reason we're bringing it to all 13 district boards is we are pursuing bylaw amendment changes. Basically, what it comes down to is we're kind of locked by our bylaws that haven't been updated in quite some time. So in order to even just change our bylaws, we need all 13 district members present. which is kind of hard when two of them haven't been attending meetings in over 2 years. So this is kind of some of the reason why we are asking for some bylaw changes. Another one is we are in the process of trying to change what our membership looks like, so we aren't so reliant on the 13 districts that do pay the mill levy. And in order to do that, we do need a bylaw change to allow for us to ask, we've actually been asked by, I believe, Natrona County to have a membership. And so in order to set that up, we need to change the bylaws to allow our BOCES 5 to do that. For those of you who aren't familiar with BOCES 5, we, like I said, have 13 member districts. We have 5-day schools, and the most notable school that we have is our 6th one, which is C-Bar-B Ranch, which is a 24/7 residential facility. That's our most well-known school. The most local one that you guys are probably familiar with is called Roosevelt Learning Center, which is located in Green River at the Jackson Elementary School. And so it's been a very beneficial program. And what we do with the day schools is we usually take students that are struggling within the district and teach them how to behave in a classroom so that they can be successful. The goal of us is basically to put ourselves out of a job. We want to get the kids where they need to be so they can get back in that classroom as fast as possible and be successful. And I believe we do have currently 10 members at Roosevelt Learning Center and about 63 total, including C-Bar-B Ranch. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you guys may have. There's an explanation from our board's attorney, as well as the proposed changes to those bylaws.
Just by way of clarification, C-Bar-B, the actual school, is in Jackson, Teton County.
It's in Wilson, but everybody
Yeah,
says
yes,
Jackson.
yeah. Any discussion? I'd entertain a motion to approve the BOCES 5 proposed bylaw amendments. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second? Mrs. Summers, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to item number 16, good of the order. Anyone with anything for good of the order?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Thompson.
as long as we're still chatting about BOCES 5, I have been pretty busy doing some trainings with the executive director and our leadership team. I've probably been about 10 hours in. We're doing business strategic planning. We're trying to find a pathway to get better funding. As you know, we are in desperate need to update our facility at the C-Bar-B Ranch. And that's going to cost us about $27 million, and that's going the inexpensive route. And so we're looking at various options for us to find funding so we don't always have to be so reliant on our member districts and the mill levies. And that's where, thank you so much for approving that, we can open up for different membership groups and hopefully try to drum up some more funding so we can meet these kids who are in dire need of services.
Further good of the order. Further good of the order. I attended a Wyoming School Boards Association Board of Directors meeting this past weekend. We are in the process of planning for the annual meeting in November, and I will be getting you those dates. They are bringing in a couple of very good keynote speakers again, and then they'll be sending out requests to the districts for participation in some of the sessions and so forth. So just that's the middle of November, and I'll get those dates to you. That's always in Casper. So. Any other good of the order? Okay, item number 17 is new business. You see the vacancy notice as of July 17th, 2024. It's refreshing to see not as many openings still on the vacancy list, so that's refreshing. B is the June 2024 Head Start Governing Board and Policy Council Monthly Report. So those are there for your information. I am happy to announce that there will not be an executive session tonight. And so we'll move on to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson to adjourn. Second? Second by Mrs. Schumacher. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by no, with the same sign? We are adjourned.